friends, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be me discussing the books that I read in the month of September and August because I didn't get a chance to discuss those books. I did actually bring the books with me this time. I only have one book for editing Teresa to just throw up in the shot there. But I have, I think, 12 books that I read during these 2 months, about roughly 6 books each month. So let's just kind of get into it, because I got a lot of things to talk about. Alright, we're going to start off in like descending order, I guess. So we'll start off with all of September's books because they're fresher in my mind, and then we'll go off to August. Let's just end this, or start this on a bad note and end on a high one. The last book that I read in September, which took forever for me to read and actually low-key put me in a slump, and that is She and Her Cat by Makoto Shinkai. This is an adult anthology book, but this is exactly how it sounds. It's supposed to follow, it's following all the cats and their female companions. It's a release is coming out. It's an arc, actually. I got this arc from NetGalley. This comes out November 22nd of this year, and I gave it a 2. I was actually super excited for this book when I first saw it. I was like, oh my goodness, it's a book about cats and their female companions. What better can it get? The red flag. The red flag that I didn't, like, think about was that it was written by, I think, a man. So there's a red flag I didn't like conceptualize in my mind, but either way I was like, you know what, it's fine. It's gonna be a good book, probably a really cute book. The first story of this book is surrounding a cat that thinks that is like that literally one of the few lines he has like in the beginning says that he fell in love with his owner, like romantically, almost immediately. And the entire of his story was him talking to other cats about how he loved his owner was his girlfriend, and it was just weird. So I was like, okay, one weird story. It's the opening story, but it's fine. This cat shows up in every single story throughout the entirety of the book, and then continues to bring up the fact that, oh no, he can't hang out with his other cat friends, he has to go home to his girlfriend. Or, oh no, he can't marry another cat, he has to go back home to his girlfriend. And it was also just like a couple of weird lines within the text itself discussing women that I was just like, okay, so this was definitely written by a man. Because there was a line where the cat Chobi was saying how like he once thought his owner was super strong and like super brave, and then he saw her crying once, like the first time, and he was like, she's not strong, she's not brave, she needs to be protected. God forbid women show emotion, apparently, to a cat. And to boot, there were just some weird instances of like the author placing very human ideals on the cats. Like the next cat that we meet wanted to get married really badly, and she got married and then pregnant, and then we never see or talk about the cat that she married ever again until we found out that he died and that she had inherited like his territory. It was just a weird book. I had really high hopes for it, and it was not that at all in the slightest. In fact, I don't think I ever want to read another book regarding cats for a while, because that was a lot, and I tried really hard to enjoy it, and it didn't work out, and I would like to be done with books about cats for the next like year. So we'll revisit any future cat books in like September of 2023. Moving on to kind of a random book for me to read. I'm forgetting who the author's name is. It's Frank something, but that is Post Secrets. This is a book that my friend had me borrow for a little bit. It's basically a collection of art that this author compiled together, or postcards or letters that the author had compiled together during his time, I think, that he was working. He turned into an art gallery basically, and this is like the compiled artwork that he gathered from other people. Basically, it's a compilation of postcards, magazine cutouts, letters of people confessing secrets, and I believe this one was around love and God. There are a lot of like discussions about God in this one. It was a very quick and easy read. I enjoyed the entire like collection. I thought it was fun, it was entertaining. It definitely had its weird moments where I was like, concerning that's anonymous, very concerning that's anonymous, but we will let it slide for now. I gave it a 5 out of 5. Would highly recommend it if you're looking for just like artwork and to flip through a book. It's like this thick of a book, I think. It's a hardback, but it's all just pictures and like some letters that you have to read through, but it's all very quick and easy to get through. I think I read it in like an hour. The next book that I read in September is A Lot Like Odes by Alexis Daria. This is the sequel or slash companion novel to Sounds Like Hola. This is an adult contemporary romance, this time following two childhood best friends who end up having a falling out around their senior year of high school. Now, they haven't talked for I think like 10 or so years at all. Gabe is now living in LA. He has a nice renowned like celebrity gym that he works at that he started, and has plans to move it or expand it into New York and have a celebrity gym there. Michelle, who's his best friend, is still living in New York where they grew up, and now she's a very well-known like marketing mogul. She helped a really big project that kind of put her name on the map, and the gym wants to ask her to help. Now Gabe is like, fuck, what do I do? So he flies back to New York to try and like not only heal the relationship but also get this marketing campaign off the ground, and things ensue, as you can tell by the cover. This book was phenomenal. I loved it so much. Like this was such a great like companion slash follow-up novel to the first book, and I can't wait for the third one. I give this a 5 out of 5 stars. It's a favorite of mine, and like Alexis Daria has just this beautiful way of like interweaving like culture with romance and like introducing those like familial ties that are so important in Latinx families. It's just so good, and I highly recommend the book. If you guys haven't read the series yet, I highly recommend Sounds Like Hola, which is also really good. It centers around like a telenovela. It's just good. I highly recommend, if you guys haven't read it yet, pick it up, because like I know some of y'all on the Text of Talk and sometimes on YouTube be talking about how much like you need your YA to have more smut. You need more smut in your YA. Or you need more smut in your literature, but only read YA books. One, I'm gonna remind you all, YA is centered around like a younger audience, 13, if that, maybe 15 to like 18. So y'all are watching or wanting to read about children boink, and that's just weird and uncomfortable, and I get it, you know, we all like good smut. We all do. But there comes a time when you just have to accept that smut in YA probably won't go any farther than A Fade to Black Sea. But if y'all are looking for lots of good smut, Alexis Daria has some really good smut. This book had like smut within like the first like 5 chapters. And listen, I was introduced to smut at like the ripe old age of 12. I didn't know what it was. I was just like, oh, okay. So it's very hard, with that being said, it's very hard for me to blush when it comes to reading smut. Spicy scenes, like unfazed. This had me blushing. Like I was blushing, I was flustered, I was like sitting there like, oh, like you literally, y'all, I read smut scenes out to my boyfriend. Like nothing was wrong. Like it was funny to me because I don't phase reading smut. This book had me blushing. Like I was afraid to read it in public is how much I was blushing. Like I couldn't. So highly recommend the series. Alexis Daria as a writer as a whole. Smut scenes are immaculate. The romance was so good. Pacing, plot, mwah. Highly recommend it. The next 3 books and the last 3 books I read in September were actually part of a 24-hour readathon. I'll leave that video link down below for y'all so y'all can, you know, enjoy it, love it, see me struggle reading for once, which is very rare. This book I tried to read for the 24-hour readathon. I did not get a chance to. The next book is The Shadow of Kiyoshi by FCE. This is the thrilling conclusion to the duology of like the Kiyoshi Chronicles, which follows Kiyoshi before she becomes an avatar, during the process, and now like in this book she's trying to wrap up all the problems that she's currently having in her life, both personally and professionally. It's a good time. I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really do enjoy the duology. I just feel like sometimes with how the writing or like the phrasing is, especially in the beginning of the book, it felt very disjointed from the original book. Like I left it off, like the first book ended and I was like, okay, I don't know where they're gonna come back from that, but okay, we'll go from it. And then it felt like there was a definite jump, but it was a hard jump to like really conceptualize in the book. It never stated like how many months had passed or like even gave you like a timeline of like seasons or anything. So it was just a really hard jump to conceptualize and really understand like what happened and where we were going. So I just feel like sometimes there were instances where it felt really disjointed. I also felt like the plot lines, there was a lot going on in this plot. There was a lot to wrap up in this duology. We had her trying to communicate with her previous lives. We had her trying to come to terms with the fact that she was an avatar left with a lot of shit to fix and not a lot of knowledge on how to do it. And as well as the fact that she had a friend who is now trying to kill all of them, and she doesn't quite understand why or how to help him or what the best route is to help him as an avatar. So it was just like, I felt there were a lot of like conflicting lines. There was also a plot within this about regarding the Fire Nation and the leaders of the Fire Nation who she should support. And I just felt like these plot lines, given the book's length and like the fact that it's a duology and you have to wrap everything up, felt super disjointed and rushed. And there were definitely instances where I read it and I was like, where is this going? Where is the flow? I felt like there were just something missing that wrapped it up and would have made it a 5 in my eyes. But I really enjoyed reading about Kiyoshi as a character and the struggle she had and kind of this internal battle that she had within herself to be a better avatar, but has also zero knowledge on what that should look like, or why she's left with this burden that she didn't ask for, and she's now kind of just like stuck with it. I really enjoyed that aspect, which is why I gave it a 4, but I felt like it was just so disjointed that had this book been longer and more disjointed, it probably would have been knocked down to a 3 for me. Moving on to the books that I did read during my 24-hour readathon, and that first one is The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This is a YA high fantasy, the conclusion to the I think, what is it? The Cruel Prince trilogy. I forget what I think it's like something Alfheim trilogy. This follows Jude and Carden as they try to wrap up their like feelings for each other and all that fun stuff. If you haven't read of or heard of The Cruel Prince, which is weird, this is a YA high fantasy that follows Jude Carden after she and her siblings have been kidnapped and are now living in the Fae realm. She's trying to rise up in power and show them that, you know, mortals can be more than just playthings for y'all to abuse. And she tries to find ways to beat the system and trump the system and become better than the system. This is a conclusion to it. I had no idea what I was going into it. I'm not gonna lie. I sat there and I was like, oh yeah, I have a feeling the trajectory is gonna end this way. And then it went the other way, and then another other way. And then it just made a complete like box that just like snake ate itself, and I still was just like in the state of awe reading the book. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. I felt like the wrap up was very, like, it was a good and satisfying conclusion to the books. It was definitely heartbreaking at times. I legit sat there and was like, but I really enjoyed the book. It was a lot faster to read than I thought it was going to be, but I really enjoyed the series. I highly recommend them if you are definitely leaning more toward like a political intrigue, a very high fantasy setting, and like lots of political intrigue, lots of battles, lots of blood and gore. The romance in the book series I feel like isn't as prominent as people on like the internet would like make it seem. I feel like it definitely takes a bit. This one deals a little heavier in the romance, but the political intrigue in the books is definitely a lot thicker. It's a lot more like front-facing than the romance itself in the first 2 books. But I highly recommend the series. This ending had me freaking out, like just losing my mind. I was like, what is going on? And also, how big is the snake? The last book I read in September, and is also the whole Therese, why are you never on the bandwagon trend, and it's Supernova by Marissa Myers. It's a YA sci-fi action novel following a group of teenagers who are the children of superheroes, and it follows 2 factions, the Renegades and the, I don't know what they're called now, but it's the Renegades who are the good guys and then the bad guys. It's following them, and Nova is somehow smack dab in the middle as she is a bad guy and goes to infiltrate the good guys to like retrieve her uncle's helmet, which will like bring power back to them. This, I give this a 5. This has been, this was the first book in a long time that I was terrified of the ending. I was stressed reading it. I think I have never been so tensed and so like clenched up reading a book in such a long time that I was just like floored by it. It has an amazing conclusion, an amazing wrap up, and it does open for like a potential spin-off series should Marissa Meyer decide like, hey, I'm low on book ideas, let's just spin off something else. I loved it. It's literally my favorite series now of all time. Like, you cannot, it will stay top 3 or top 5 in that list for a very long time. I highly enjoyed this book. I highly recommend this series if you guys have not read it yet. And it was just so good that it was so good. I highly recommend it if you haven't had a chance to pick up the series yet. I highly recommend the series. Pick it up if you guys haven't. Like, moving on to the books that I read in August. This one is the last one that I read during that month and did put me in a bit of a miniature slump, which I then tried to follow up with a 24-hour readathon, which, like, you can tell I haven't had the brain cell in a while. But that is The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. This is an adult retelling of the Trojan War following Briseis' eyes, who is like the maiden who was stolen and then like given to Achilles as like a prize. If you guys know me on this channel, I've had this book on my TBR for a long time. It's been a minute since I finally got a chance to pick it up and read it. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought the prose was wonderful. I thought it flowed really well, and it was a refreshing take on the story. And I felt like I could really just picture everything happening. The thing that dinged me for 2 stars with this entire book was that I felt like everything was just like, this is an issue I've been having. I had it with Ariadne. I felt like things were just being told to us. Like, clearly, like, Briseis, like, in the overall arch of like the Trojan War, is a very minor player. She's a very soft voice that you don't get to hear about in any of the stories at all. And I think because of that, and because the author tried to create this character from essentially nothing, she fell very flat. And a lot of the stories that she was telling, a lot of the information she was telling, she was relaying. Like, I felt like it was being relayed and told to the reader as if it was a man telling tea, a straight man telling tea. It was very matter of fact. There weren't any emotions, or not a lot of emotions or feelings involved. And it was like you wanted to know more and hear more about her feelings on and thoughts on things, and the feelings of the girls around her, and like how she was feeling about like Achilles and Patroclus, and like that entire dynamic, and like the things that she, as basically like I forgot the term, but like a prize from the war, was seeing like all the horrors and the disgust that she must have felt. And she just felt very flat to me. I didn't feel any emotions. I was expecting to go into this book feeling all of them. I was expecting and anticipating to feel the disgust, the horror, the terror, the absolute like anger that Briseis must have felt to have lost her entire family, to have watched her lose her entire family, then get like pawned off as a prize for a war for the man responsible for it. And then to watch this man for the next like what, 10 or so years, I want to say, grow and get to know him potentially, or just grow to hate him. And like, it just was a very flat novel. Briseis was flat. I didn't have any feelings about her, like any feelings on her about it. She didn't have any emotions. It was a lost like retelling, because we don't hear about a lot of the women in the Greek mythology. So I wanted to hear her have more of a personality, more of a backbone. And that was also my issue with Ariadne, was that I felt like things just happened to her, and she didn't really have like a strong emotion behind it. So I was just like, I was just very confused and very like disappointed that I had like wanted to read this book for so long, and then the main character, like the lens that we view through all this, basically had like no emotions to me. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess. And the next book I read, because when you see the rest of the books I've read before this book, you'll see why I needed a breather. That is The Romance Book Club by Lisa K. Adams. This was a huge hit in 2020. I've been meaning to pick it up for a long time. This is an adult contemporary romance following a man. Stay with me. Following a man who is a Major League Baseball player, and he has been with his wife for I think 3 or 4 years now, maybe 5 or 6, I think. I don't remember. And his wife is now filing for divorce because he has found out, hint hint, that she has been faking her orgasms the entirety of their relationship. I think she said she's only had like 1 or 2 since their relationship started. Of course, there are other reasons for the divorce, but that was kind of like the pivotal like straw that broke the camel's back moment. Now in his sorrow, his friends are like, we'll give this idiot a chance, and bring him into their book club where they read romance novels and attempt to understand the woman's psyche more, to understand how to get a woman to like finish, to understand how to be like a better partner overall. Reading the book, I was like, oh, this is very fun, this is very cute and very enjoyable. I step back from the book and I'm like, wow, what man would ever read a romance book to become a better partner? Like, this is probably the ultimate like women's fantasy, because there's no way in hell, shape, or form that a man would join a book club to read romance novels to learn to become a better partner. None. But I give this a 5 out of 5 stars. I thought that the comedic timing in this novel was great. I love the characters, and like they're not caricatures of anything. I love the romance that was getting rebuilt up from the ground up. I love second chance romances. And there is like the miscommunication trope in this book, but I think this book has the most well done version of a miscommunication trope I have ever read. It's the most like realistic version of a miscommunication trope, where it's just like y'all aren't talking, y'all aren't discussing anything, and you guys are letting all of your past trauma get in the way of your relationship, which you should have discussed with your partner instead of letting it bubble up. I highly recommend this book. I will be continuing on with the series to see what I think about it, but oh my god, I need to stop being like the last person to start reading popular books. Like, I don't know what it is about me. I see a popular book, I'm like, oh, that sounds super interesting, I'm gonna read it, and then I just like never read it. And I don't know what's wrong with me. I will try to be better, but you know, I don't know. The next book I read in August was You've Sam by Dustin Tao. This is Dustin Tao's debut novel. It's a YA, I guess like fabulism novel, following young Julie as she is struggling to really come to terms with her boyfriend's death. He died of a car accident, and she's kind of stuck in the middle of like mourning and trying to be what everyone thinks she should be, and where in the point of that mourning process she should be. All she wants to do is forget Sam and move on. And then one day she gets so desperate to hear his voice, she calls him up, and he actually picks up. And this follows the novel of Julie and the process of moving on, and the process of like romance and love and all that stuff. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a nice, fun read. It was very like, it flowed really well. You could really see and feel Julie's emotions and really feel for her situation, and kind of have her feel her heartbreak and her like just complete loss of things. Like, she lost her ability to do her hobby, she didn't know what to do, lost her friends, all that stuff. But the one thing that dinged me was that given all of Julie's questions about why she can now suddenly speak with her dead boyfriend, none of them got answered. And I get it, it's like a fabulism novel, you're supposed to just accept the magic for what it is. But Julie asked the question, how can we do this? What are the limitations? Blah 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 blah. And Sam answered with so many I don't knows, or I just know, or I think this is what's gonna happen if we do it this way. I sat there and was like, okay, now I want to know, and now I'm frustrated, and I, in all of my pettiness, would have just hung up on Sam and never called him again if I heard like another I don't know coming out of his mouth. It's like, at that point, like, if you're gonna ask questions that often and have him answer in that way, I demand an answer, and I expect an answer as to how this magic turned out by the end of this novel. But it never happened, and I was so upset. There was also like, I feel like Dustin's way of transitioning between past and present got a little wonky. There were definitely times when I was like in the middle of the present setting, and then it would like transition into the past. My mind completely skimmed over it, and I'd sit there and go, why are we in a different setting, in a different time zone? Why is Sam alive? What is going on? And I'd have to go back and read it again, just because like there wasn't a physical page break between the transition. It was like, and the scene changes, and I'm like, you're not a play. But I really enjoyed this book. I think it's a really good like study on grief and the process of healing and losing someone. Good book. Just some weird things going on in there. The next book that I read during that reading vlog was The Silence That Binds Us by Joanna Ho. I believe this is Joanna Ho's either sophomore or debut novel. This is in a YA contemporary, following May, who is not at all the picture-perfect child that their parents want her to be. However, her brother, Danny, is like top tier, like we obey, we like love Danny. Danny is like the golden child. Though one day, after hearing that Danny gets into Princeton but not his dream school, Danny proceeds to commit suicide. And while grappling with this loss with her family and trying to heal from it, the very racist people in the world in her school zone decide to start using Danny's death as a reason to start like blaming parents for the school suicides that have been going on within the community. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It's like a favorite book of mine. I absolutely adored this book. I thought, like, I cried, I teared up, I sat there for a while and started questioning things. This not only discusses like mental health and the problem of like especially older children keeping things to themselves and really like bottling it up, but it also puts into question racism. It's a very like anti-racist book. It discusses the problems that all the BIPOC have to go through that we don't really recognize within ourselves, that we've all gone through. I feel like this book, while it discusses the individual problems that each race goes through, like the BIPOC communities go through, it also discusses how at its core our struggles are all the same. We have all been oppressed by this white entity, this overarching figure that has decidedly ruined our lives, present, past, and probably future. And it puts a more of a collective lens on the issue of anti-racism instead of the individual one. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 5, like I said. It's my favorite book, one of my favorite books of the year. It'll definitely be on that list. It was just like a list of emotions, and it was such a beautiful novel to like discuss grief and mental health and racism all wrapped up in one novel. The second to last book I read in October. In August is Look at the Titanic by Stacey Lee. This is a YA historical fiction novel following Valerie, or Val, as she sneaks onto the Titanic to try and convince her brother to come join her, you know, move to America and become like people, circus performers that they've always wanted to be. I really enjoyed this book. I thought that the characters were all very fleshed out. This does kind of have ties to the original Titanic, considering there were 6 Chinese immigrants who were on the boat. And my biggest issue is that there was just some random things thrown in there to make it harder. Like there was an almost like sexual assault scene. There was just like some misogynistic scenes in there that I was just like, listen, y'all are about to die right now. I don't need it. Like, can we shift the focus onto something else? Like, I understood why, considering the time period and the culture, but I was just like, there are so many other like plot lines that are going on. I needed to shift. And I also felt that the romances in the novel were like, okay, why do I need it? It's like, y'all, like I said, y'all are gonna die. This isn't the Titanic, like the movie Titanic. Like, we don't need the romance. I would have rather it focused on like the sibling aspect and their relationship rather than the romantic aspects and those like random little tidbits. I feel like had those gotten like taken out and given more focus to the sibling aspect and the fact that, you know, the ship is sinking, probably would have given it a 5 or like a 4.5. Like it was just weird. I did enjoy it though. Like I think I'll be picking up more of Stacey Lee's books, but like the plot lines were just the weird thing for me. And the last book in this wrap up, and the last book that I read in August, was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is an adult contemporary novel following Vanessa in dual timeline. We follow her first in in the year 2000, where she is attending high school. She's 16, and she begins a very covert and very serious relationship with her teacher. Flash forward to 2017, we see Vanessa now as kind of like a troubled 30-year-old who's just like stuck somewhere in her life, but like looks back fondly on her relationship with her teacher. That is until more like a young girl from I think a couple years younger than them comes out and says that she was sexually assaulted by the same teacher. Now as more stories start to pop up and more things start to click in Vanessa's head, she has to make the choice of whether or not she wants to not only A, speak out, but 2, really reevaluate the relationship with her professor and see and remove the rose-colored glasses that she once had, looking back on this relationship. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Very clearly, like, very triggering. Like, sexual assault, pedophilia, like, grooming. Like, there's just the gamut of, like, trigger warnings on this one. So I'll leave my review of this when that's done, probably, like, tomorrow or something when this video goes up, like tomorrow night, for y'all to be able to see my thoughts and the full gamut of trigger warnings. I was triggered during this book. Like there was a specific line that I will not talk about because I will just start sobbing and I have other things to do that like I had to put the book down. It was a good book. I loved reading from Vanessa's perspective, and you can like, I love the way that Kate Elizabeth Russell wrote this story. You could tell even like in 2000 that like that there were like little red flags that her brain was picking up on, and little things that like did not seem right, but things that like she brushed aside because, you know, this is real, this is love, this is romance, this is everything. Highly recommend the book if you're in the right mindset. Don't even think about picking it up if you're not even remotely ready. I thought I was ready. I was not ready. Like, don't pick it up if you're not ready for it, because it was a lot of things, and like it was just like a smack in the face, but like it was such a beautiful novel and written well, like written so well, and I was just like floored by how great of a novel it was. But that is it for the books that I read in the month of August and September. If you guys like this video and want me to do more of these, I do them every month, hopefully. But if you guys want to see more of my thoughts on them, I will have my reviews linked down below. It might just come out a little later, so come back to the video in a couple days, and my reviews will all be there. But other than that, hopefully you guys are taking care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!